The notification pinged on my phone at 2:30 a.m. Hong Kong time. I wasn't surprised. I'd grown used to the isolation, the quiet emptiness that came with living in a city so far from home. Sitting on the terrace of my sleek Kowloon apartment, I gazed out at the neon-lit skyline, the shimmering lights of skyscrapers that had become as familiar to me as the endless stretch of traffic below. It felt like a dream, a city where everything moved at lightning speed, yet I felt anchored, detached. The message was from James, my best friend from Los Angeles. You need to see this. I clicked on the attachment, my breath catching in my throat. It was a photo of Amanda, my ex-wife, in a wedding dress. Amanda, my ex-wife of 8 years. The woman I once imagined would be by my side for the rest of my life. She was standing next to David Harrington, a corporate executive at Harrington Enterprises, the finance firm where she had worked as an assistant. The photo was taken at their wedding, and there she was, radiant, glowing in a designer gown I could never have imagined her wearing. Her blonde hair carefully styled into an intricate updo that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. The place they were getting married, the Ritz-Carlton Hong Kong, was as extravagant as it sounded. It was the kind of venue that whispered of wealth and power, a world I'd once thought would be hers if we stayed together. And yet, here I was, 7,000 miles away, feeling like a shadow in my own life. David stood beside her in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his smug smile practically radiating confidence, the kind only a man of his age and wealth could have. He was in his late 40s, not exactly the type of guy I'd expected her to end up with. Still, he seemed to fit the role. Handsome in a polished corporate way, clearly in control of his world. And Amanda, she looked like she belonged there, beside him. As if she were always meant to be in a world of high society, something I had never quite fit into, no matter how hard I tried to support her dreams. I wanted to feel anger, but instead, I just felt hollow, like a piece of my life had slipped away without me even realizing it. I stared at the photo, my heart sinking as memories flashed through my mind. Our house in Los Angeles, the plans we made together, the future we were supposed to have. I had thought we were happy. I had thought she was happy. But in the end, that all shattered, just like the fragile glass that David's world seemed to be made of. My phone buzzed again, pulling me from my thoughts. It was another message from James. Call me when you can. Something's going down at the reception. I glanced at the time. It was still early morning in Los Angeles. The wedding had been the night before, and now, just hours after it happened, James was texting me as if something important had gone wrong. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart, and called him back. The phone rang twice before James picked up, his voice tight and strained. "Samuel, you good?" he asked, a hint of concern in his tone. "I'm fine," I said, though I wasn't sure I was. I hadn't been fine since the day Amanda walked out of our marriage. I ran my fingers over the balcony railing, the cool metal beneath my fingertips, grounding me. "What happened?" I asked. "Listen, I wasn't going to go, but Charlotte, my girlfriend, thought we should at least show up for the ceremony. Lily's, Amanda's sister, is one of Charlotte's best friends, so we went. We stayed for the ceremony, but we skipped the reception. Honestly, Samuel, I'm glad we did." James paused for a second, and I could tell something was weighing on him. It was a mess. I felt a sharp intake of breath, not because I was happy something had gone wrong, but because I needed to know how everything was unraveling for Amanda, the woman I once trusted with my future. "What do you mean? What happened?" "Well, we were seated in the back, trying to stay out of the way, but I could see it. Amanda was nervous. I've never seen her like that before. She was shaking when she exchanged the vows. David, he looked smug. Just smug. Like he had won something," James said, his voice full of disbelief. "Get to the part that isn't so pretty," I pressed, feeling the old anger rise within me again. James sighed, his voice lowering. "So we're at the cocktail hour, and this older woman, probably in her 60s, walks up to Amanda. She's wearing a red dress, and she's got this sharp, almost regal air about her. I could tell she was David's mom right away." My heart skipped a beat. I knew who he was talking about. Janet Harrington, David's mother. I'd heard the name before. David had mentioned her once or twice when Amanda was working late with him, complaining about how difficult she was. He had described her as complicated. But this was different. James continued. She looks at Amanda with this cold smile, and she says, "You're the third one, aren't you?" "Third?" I repeated, disbelief creeping into my voice. "Yeah." She doesn't even blink when Amanda asks her what she meant. Janet just smiles wider and says, "Third assistant David's married. You're the youngest. Congratulations on that." I stood up from my chair, my chest tightening with anger and something deeper, something I couldn't quite name. No way. "Yeah." And then she goes on about David's type, James said. She tells Amanda, "David likes the chase, the power, the young, ambitious women eager to please. But he gets bored quickly. He always leaves. His first wife was 25 when they married, divorced 2 years later when he started sleeping with a new associate. The second one was 27, and that marriage ended after 3 years too." I felt the room spin for a moment. It wasn't just David who was the problem. It was the pattern, the cycle of betrayal that Amanda had stepped right into, the same pattern that had defined my marriage to her. It all made sense now. I ran my hands through my hair, my mind racing. "David's been married twice before?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, and get this. Amanda was the assistant he started sleeping with when he was still married to the second wife. It was a mess, Samuel. David was too charming to be left behind." James paused, his voice growing serious. "And Janet? She made it crystal clear. David's history repeats itself. You might be on your honeymoon, but he's already thinking about the next assistant." I stood there, barely able to breathe. Amanda had run out of her own reception after that. David, drunk and defensive, tried to cover it up, but the damage was done. And James and Charlotte had left shortly after. I took a deep breath, the weight of it all crashing down on me. This wasn't a fairy tale. It never had been. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy heart. The city of Hong Kong sprawling beneath me like a maze I couldn't escape. The view from my terrace was as stunning as ever, but today it felt cold. The constant hum of traffic, the blaring horns, the hurried footsteps of people below, all of it seemed like an ocean of noise I couldn't swim through. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to leave my bed, yet I couldn't stay there, trapped in the same memories that seemed to haunt me no matter how far I ran. I sat up, rubbing my face, trying to shake the fog from my mind. The photo of Amanda in her wedding dress was still burned into my memory, though I tried to force it away, push it to the back of my mind. But it was impossible. It kept coming back, replaying like an old song stuck on repeat. She looked so beautiful, so perfect beside David. They looked happy. Of course, they did. I had no right to be upset by that. I wasn't in her life anymore. She made her choices. She moved on. I was the one who had to learn how to let go. The phone buzzed beside me. It was another message from James. "Call me when you get a chance. You need to hear this." I stared at the screen for a long time before clicking the call button. "Samuel?" His voice was tight, controlled, and I could tell something was off. "Yeah, it's me. What happened?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. I had a sinking feeling in my stomach already. "Something else went down last night," James started, his words coming in quick bursts. "I'm still trying to process it. After Amanda ran out of the reception, David, well, he didn't just sit there and sulk like I thought he would. He started telling people that Amanda was just emotional and hormonal, like all women are. He kept saying she would calm down, that everything would be fine once she remembered how lucky she was to be with him." I felt my jaw tighten. I wasn't surprised by this. David had always struck me as a man who expected things to go his way, no matter the cost to anyone else. But hearing it out loud, coming from someone who was supposed to be her partner, it was infuriating. James paused for a second, probably waiting for my response. But I didn't have one. I couldn't say anything. I was too angry. "Samuel, it gets worse," he said, breaking the silence. "David actually told people that Amanda had been a perfect little assistant before they got married. He was bragging about how she fit into his world and how she was doing everything he wanted. And you know what? Some people believed him. They didn't even question it. They just nodded and agreed. I've never heard anyone so full of themselves." The air in the room felt thinner, suffocating me. I could picture it. David, drunk on his own sense of superiority, telling anyone who would listen how much he owned Amanda, how much he had molded her into his idea of perfection. I felt like I was suffocating, as though the weight of everything, The betrayal, the hurt, the loss was finally crashing down all at once. But I couldn't bring myself to feel pity for Amanda. I couldn't bring myself to feel anything for her. James's voice snapped me back to reality. "You still there?" "Yeah," I muttered. "I'm here. What else?" "So this part's a little, well, strange," he said, clearly reluctant. "I ran into someone last night after we left. One of Amanda's old friends. Her name's Kate. She was at the wedding. She's known Amanda since college. Anyway, Kate came up to me and we started talking. She said Amanda had been calling her, asking for advice. She said Amanda was starting to realize she'd made a mistake. I mean, you know how Amanda is. She's always been stubborn. But Kate said she sounded like she was finally seeing things clearly, like she was starting to understand how much she'd messed up. She asked Kate if it was too late to fix things with you. I let the words sink in slowly, like ice-cold water pouring over my head. Too late? I couldn't believe it. After everything, after how easily she had let go of us, of me, now she was asking about me. Now, after all the things she'd said, after tearing apart everything we'd built together, the anger inside me flared up again, hotter than before. "I don't care," I said, my voice hoarse. "It's too late for her. She made her choice. She walked away from everything we had, and now she has to live with that." I didn't wait for James to respond. I didn't need to hear him try to comfort me or tell me it would be okay. I wasn't sure if I even believed in okay anymore. What did it matter? Amanda had moved on, and I had no place in her life now. The woman I had spent 8 years with, the one I had hoped would be there for the rest of my life, was now a stranger to me, and that was the hardest pill to swallow. I ended the call and sank back into the chair, staring out at the city as the sun began to rise. My life felt like it was still spinning out of control, no matter how far away I went. Hong Kong was supposed to be my fresh start, but I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep pretending everything was fine. The truth was, I wasn't okay. I wasn't close to being okay. I ran my hands through my hair, a sense of dread creeping over me. The only thing I could do was keep moving forward, even if it felt like I was doing it alone. But as the day began to take shape outside my window, something inside me started to shift. Maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind me. And if Amanda's life with David was about to come crashing down, well, that wasn't something I needed to get involved in. Not anymore. I stood up, the cold breeze from the terrace brushing against my skin. It was time to start building something real for myself. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was ready to do it. I spent the next few days in a haze, the weight of the past few weeks bearing down on me. Hong Kong was a city of contrasts, bright neon lights in the night, silent high-rises in the day. But despite its vibrancy, I felt like I was fading into the background. My work as an architect provided some distraction, but the constant hum of the city couldn't drown out the quiet turmoil inside me. I kept thinking about Amanda, about how quickly she moved on, how she had slipped into a life I wasn't a part of anymore. I had always thought we were building something solid together. But looking back now, it was like trying to fix an old structure that was too far gone, with cracks we both ignored. I couldn't stop replaying the moments from James' phone call. The image of David, smug and drunk, bragging about Amanda's submission to his world. He had molded her into the perfect wife, the perfect assistant, the perfect accessory to his life. How could she not see the pattern? How could she not realize that she was just another notch on his belt, another young woman who was going to end up discarded once the thrill wore off? My stomach twisted every time I thought about it. Amanda had asked about me through her friend Kate, and that was the part I couldn't shake. Was she really sorry, or was she just looking for someone to fall back on when the reality of her decisions hit her? I thought about everything we'd been through, how we had struggled to buy a house, how I had worked late into the night on projects, pouring my heart into a career that I loved, and how she had always been there by my side, until she wasn't. Until her ambition and desire for more had taken her down a different path, one I couldn't follow. I wasn't angry anymore, not the way I used to be. It wasn't rage that kept me awake at night. It was sadness, regret. Regret that we had spent so many years trying to make a life that was ultimately built on shaky ground. Regret that I had allowed myself to believe in something that wasn't real, that wasn't sustainable. I had tried to convince myself that maybe I could have done something differently. Maybe I could have been more present, more supportive. Maybe I could have been what she needed. But deep down, I knew I couldn't change the past. No amount of effort would have been enough to fix the cracks that had formed long before she had met David. A few days later, I found myself in a quiet cafe near the harbor, trying to focus on some work that had piled up while I stewed in my own thoughts. The soft hum of conversation around me didn't help. My mind kept drifting back to Amanda, back to the call I had received, and back to the harsh reality of the life I had left behind. I couldn't decide if I was trying to convince myself I was better off or if I was just avoiding the truth. A truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. My phone buzzed again, interrupting my thoughts. This time it was an email from James, followed by a message on my phone. It's done. Amanda and David are officially over. It's like she's finally waking up from some kind of fog. My chest tightened as I read the message. What did that even mean? Amanda had been with David for less than a year, and now she was back where she started? Was she really finally realizing what I had known all along? Or was this just another moment of fleeting self-awareness that would fade when the next shiny thing caught her attention? I stared at the email, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I couldn't help but to think about the one thing I was sure of. I had to stop living in the past. The version of me that had been with Amanda was gone, and clinging to that version was only holding me back from something better. I had built my life around a dream that was no longer mine, and it was time to start building something new, something that was truly mine. I pressed reply on the email, drafting a quick message to James. Thanks for keeping me updated. I'm glad she's figuring it out, but I'm not sure I can be involved in this anymore. I stared at the screen for a moment longer, then hit send. I leaned back in my chair and let out a deep breath. I could feel the tension in my shoulders begin to loosen, as if a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying had been lifted. Maybe it was the right decision. Maybe it wasn't. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was doing what I needed to do for myself. That evening, I walked along the harbor, the cool evening breeze lifting the strands of hair from my forehead. The lights of the city reflected off the water, but they no longer felt like they were mocking me. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. I wasn't sure what was coming next for me, whether I would stay in Hong Kong for good or whether I would eventually return to Los Angeles. But I knew one thing. I was moving forward. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was moving forward. As I walked, I thought about all the places I had yet to see, all the things I had yet to experience. I thought about the new opportunities, the new people, and perhaps most importantly, the new version of myself I was becoming. It wasn't about forgetting the past. It wasn't about pretending that everything with Amanda had been a mistake. It was about accepting that it had ended, that we had both chosen different paths, and that was okay. I stopped at the edge of the water, looking out over the harbor, feeling the cool breeze wash over me. I couldn't change the past, but I could shape my future. And for the first time, I felt like I was ready to build something that was mine. Something real. The future wasn't going to be easy, but maybe, just maybe, it would be better than anything I had imagined. The days that followed felt like a slow, steady progression towards something I couldn't fully name. The initial shock of learning about Amanda's situation had faded, replaced by a sense of reluctant understanding. She'd made her choices. She was reaping the consequences of them, just as I was, in a different way. It wasn't so much about her anymore, not really. It was about me, what I was going to do with the life I had left. I kept myself busy, buried in work. Hong Kong had become a temporary escape, a place where I could pour all my energy into something tangible. Designs, blueprints, meetings that were as impersonal as they were necessary. But even amidst the concrete and glass of the projects I worked on, my thoughts often wandered. I couldn't help it. There were moments when I thought about the past, about the future we'd once planned together. I thought about our first home, the house that we had envisioned as the place we'd build a life. It felt so distant now, like a dream from someone else's life. I kept telling myself it wasn't worth dwelling on. But still, I couldn't shake the thought of how easily she'd moved on. Amanda's divorce from David, followed by her swift rebound, was a harsh reminder of just how different our paths had become. The woman who had once been so important to me, the woman I thought I knew inside and out, was someone I could no longer reach, no longer recognize. It wasn't just her marriage to David. It was everything. The ambition, the hunger for more, the way she had discarded our life for something shiny, something new. She had chosen that life, and I was left to pick up the pieces of the one she had abandoned. I pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the future. I had to. I had no other choice. My job in Hong Kong was starting to take off. I'd been offered a long-term project with one of the biggest construction firms in the city, and though it felt like a welcome distraction, a part of me was still restless. I thought about the house Amanda and I had dreamed of buying. I thought about the life we could have had if we had just stuck together, weathered the storms. I thought about everything we had lost. But that's all it was now, thinking. It wasn't real. The real world was here and now. And I had to move forward. One evening, a few weeks later, I found myself in a small bar near the waterfront. I had been working late and was looking for a quiet place to wind down, maybe have a drink, clear my head. The bar was dimly lit with jazz music playing softly in the background. It was the kind of place that felt like a secret, tucked away from the city's relentless pace. I ordered a whiskey and sat by the window, watching the lights of the boats bobbing on the water. The familiar tension in my shoulders began to ease as the warmth of the alcohol settled into me. It wasn't long before someone sat down across from me. I looked up, surprised to see a woman smiling at me, a friendly, easy smile that felt like it belonged to a completely different life. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, her voice smooth, confident. I smiled back, nodding. "Sure. It's a free country." She laughed, a soft sound that immediately put me at ease. "I'm Ela," she said, offering a hand. "Architect, too. I work over at the International Airport Expansion Project." I shook her hand, surprised by the coincidence. "Samuel," I said, "I'm working on the renovations for a few buildings downtown." "You're the American architect they brought in for the green building projects, right?" she asked, tilting her head. "I've heard good things about you." I laughed, feeling a little embarrassed. "I don't know about good things, but yeah, that's me." We both settled into a comfortable silence for a moment, sipping our drinks. I could feel the weight of the past few months lifting off me, just a little. There was something about Ela's presence that felt easy. She wasn't trying to be anyone she wasn't. Her confidence was quiet, genuine, not forced. We began talking about work, projects, timelines, the challenges of building in a city like Hong Kong, but the conversation soon drifted into personal territory. She told me about her family in Lebanon, her work experience in Paris, and how she had come to Hong Kong for the airport project. I listened, fascinated by the way she talked about her career, her ambitions, but also how she seemed so grounded. She wasn't talking about the next promotion, the next big step. She was talking about the work itself, the joy of creating something meaningful. For the first time in a long time, I felt a real connection with someone. Not the desperate kind of connection that came from loneliness, but the kind of connection that came from shared values, from understanding what it meant to work hard, to build something that mattered. We talked for hours. I lost track of time as the conversation deepened. She didn't ask me about my past, about Amanda, about the divorce. She didn't need to. It wasn't that kind of conversation. I found myself laughing more, feeling lighter than I had in months. And when the night finally came to an end, Ela gave me her number. "I'm sure we'll run into each other again," she said with a smile. "But if not, let's grab coffee sometime. Talk shop, you know." I walked home that night with a sense of something new stirring inside me. It wasn't just about the connection I'd made with Ela. It was about the realization that I could still connect with people. I could still have relationships, meaningful ones, without needing to hold on to the past. There was something out there waiting for me, something that wasn't defined by old mistakes or lingering memories. For the first time in months, I felt the tiniest spark of hope. It wasn't about forgetting Amanda or trying to replace her. It was about moving on, really moving on, and embracing the possibility of something new, something real. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally ready for it. As I stood outside my apartment, looking out over the city, I let the thoughts settle in. I was ready to build something again, But this time, it would be mine. Something solid. Something real. And I wasn't going to let the past get in the way of that. I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand, the soft light of dawn filtering through the blinds. It was still early, too early, but I had grown used to the rhythm of the city waking up before I was fully ready to face it. I reached over, my hand brushing the phone as I tried to shake off the remnants of a restless sleep. The message on my screen was from James. "You heard about Amanda, right?" I rubbed my eyes, the familiar tightness in my chest returning. I had almost forgotten about her, or at least tried to. The memory still lingered, the ghost of the life we tried to build, but I had been focused on moving forward. Or at least, I thought I was. I tapped on the message. "What happened?" James replied quickly, his words even shorter than usual. "She's back in LA, left David. She's coming to Hong Kong in a few weeks to meet with some of her old friends, including Kate. I think she wants to talk to you." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. My first instinct was to ignore it, to let it slip by, to focus on my life here in Hong Kong and forget about the woman who had left me behind. But part of me, the part that still remembered the good times, the laughter, the late nights planning our future, felt something stir. Guilt, perhaps. Maybe even curiosity. I felt a sharp pang in my chest. Did she really want to talk to me? After everything? After how easily she had walked away, how quickly she had moved on to David, only to find herself back at square one? What could she possibly want from me now? What was left to say? I didn't respond to James immediately. Instead, I sat there on the edge of the bed, staring out at the city as it began to come alive. The morning fog had cleared, revealing the skyline, the glass towers reflecting the first rays of sunlight. Hong Kong was a city that didn't stop, even in the early hours of the morning. It had become my home in a way I hadn't expected. Detached, fast-paced, but full of potential. I could get lost here if I tried hard enough. I had been trying hard enough. But it wasn't just the city that was changing me. It was this new chapter in my life. It was the work, the challenges, the small victories. It was the quiet moments with people like Ela, whose presence didn't demand anything from me, but gave me a sense of peace. It was the feeling of being able to breathe again, of not constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if Amanda would come back, wondering if I could fix what was broken. I grabbed my phone again, this time with more determination. I tapped out a quick response to James. "I don't know if I'm ready for that." I stared at the message before sending it. It felt true, but it also felt like a lie. Part of me wanted to put everything behind me and never look back. But there was another part, a smaller part, that wondered if there was anything left to salvage. Not with Amanda. No, that ship had sailed, but with myself. Was there something I needed to say to her? Was there something she needed to hear from me? I shook my head, pushing the thoughts away. This wasn't about her. This was about me. I had spent so much time trying to make sense of what happened, trying to fix a relationship that was broken beyond repair. I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't the man who would wait for someone else to fix the cracks. I had spent too many years convincing myself that I could make it work, that if I just tried harder, everything would be okay. But the truth was, I couldn't fix everything. I couldn't fix her. And I certainly couldn't fix the mess we had made of each other. I put my phone down and stood up, moving to the window. The view of the harbor stretched out before me, and I watched as the boats gently rocked in the water. It felt like a lifetime ago that I had been in Los Angeles, sitting in that quiet house we had dreamed about, the house that Amanda no longer wanted, the house that had never felt like home. Not really. I had tried to make it work, but it had been a house built on cracks that neither of us wanted to acknowledge. I turned away from the window and went to the kitchen, grabbing a cup of coffee to help clear my head. The silence of the apartment was comforting, but it also felt like a reminder of the loneliness I had tried to outrun. I had moved to Hong Kong to escape the ghosts of my past, but they had a way of finding me. And now, Amanda was part of that ghost. I didn't need her to come back and explain herself. I didn't need her to apologize or try to make things right. I had made peace with everything. At least, I thought I had. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. I wasn't as unaffected as I liked to tell myself. I had questions. Questions about why she had chosen this life. why she had walked away when things got hard, why she had picked David over me. And now, with her reaching out again, I realized I was still waiting for answers I wasn't sure I would ever get. I finished my coffee and walked back to the window. The city looked different now. It didn't feel like a place of escape anymore. It felt like home, even if I wasn't sure where I was headed. I knew I had to make a decision, whether to reach out to Amanda, whether to hear her out, or whether to leave the past behind for good. But for now, I was going to focus on what I had in front of me: the work, the city, the quiet moments with people who didn't ask anything from me but my presence. I wasn't ready to face Amanda. I wasn't ready to dig up the past again, but I knew that if I ever did, it would be on my terms, not hers. Not anyone else's. I had moved forward, and that's what mattered. The next few days passed in a blur. I kept my head down, focusing on the work in front of me, trying not to let anything distract me. Hong Kong was bustling, the city as alive as ever, but it felt like I was floating through it, not fully participating. The tension that had settled in my chest since I'd heard from James hadn't really gone away. The truth was, the thought of Amanda coming to Hong Kong brought a storm of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to tell her to stay away, to leave the past behind, to move on and stop trying to involve me in the wreckage of our former life. Another part of me, a smaller part, wondered if maybe there was something we could salvage, some conversation we hadn't had, some closure that would finally put everything to rest. I hated that I even entertained the idea. There was no point in going back to that place. I'd been through enough to know that some relationships were meant to fall apart, and no amount of effort could put them back together. My life in Hong Kong wasn't perfect, but it was mine now. It was a fresh start, one that didn't have Amanda's name or the weight of our history hanging over it. But then, there were moments when I caught myself thinking of her. Her laugh, the way she used to light up a room, the person she had been before the ambition consumed her, before she chose David over everything we had. Those memories were sharp, even now, even with all the distance between us. I woke up to another message from James the morning after I'd received her name in the mix. "She's here. Meeting up with Kate today. They're going to call you later. Just letting you know." I stared at the screen for a while, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. My initial reaction was to shut it all down, to tell James to tell Amanda to leave me out of it, to let her do whatever she was going to do with David, without involving me. I didn't owe her anything. I'd already moved on, I thought. But then, the thought of her being here, so close, somewhere in this city, made something twist inside me. I had spent so long trying to forget everything that had happened, and now, the ghost of her was right in front of me within reach. I set my phone down, running a hand through my hair. I hadn't felt this disoriented in a while. When I first moved here, I'd promised myself I would never look back, not at her, not at the wreckage of our marriage. I had buried it all under the weight of my work, and that had worked for a while. It had to work. It was all I had. But now she was here, and I was tempted to pick up the pieces of that life I had tried so hard to walk away from. Maybe I was looking for answers that I would never get. Maybe I just wanted to understand why she had chosen David, why she had chosen a life of wealth and ambition over what we had. But even as I thought about it, I knew those answers didn't matter. They wouldn't change anything. I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath and focusing on the present. The phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from James. "Hey," I said, picking up the phone, trying to sound casual, but I could hear my own tension in my voice. "Samuel," James said, his tone more serious than I was used to. "Amanda and Kate want to meet with you. They're at this cafe near the pier, the one we used to go to when you first got here. I think Amanda just wants to talk, to get some things off her chest. She knows she messed up, and she's been asking about you. I thought you should know." The silence stretched between us for a moment, and I felt my stomach tighten. A part of me wanted to say no, to hang up and forget about the whole thing. But another part of me, one that I hated, wondered if this was something I needed to do. Maybe I wasn't as ready to let go as I thought. Maybe I still needed that closure, even though I knew deep down that it wouldn't change anything. "I don't know, James," I said, rubbing my temple. "I don't think I'm ready to face all that. It's been months. I've moved on. I don't want to open old wounds. James was quiet for a moment, then he spoke again, his voice softer now. I get it. Believe me, I do. But I think she's really trying to make things right. And I don't think she's going to leave you alone until she gets the chance to talk. You don't have to go, but if you do, just be honest with her. Don't let her off easy. She needs to hear it. The truth. That's what she wanted. The truth. Maybe she did. Maybe she had been too afraid to hear it when we were together, too consumed by what she thought she needed to see things clearly. I wasn't sure I could give her the truth she wanted or the truth she deserved. All right, I said finally, the words leaving my mouth before I had a chance to reconsider. I'll go, but I'm not promising anything. I'll let her know. They'll be waiting, James said, and then the line went dead. I stared at my phone for a moment, the weight of the decision settling in. The familiar knot in my stomach twisted again, but this time there was no turning back. It wasn't just about Amanda anymore. It was about me, too. About putting an end to something that had been haunting me, even from across the world. I stood up and grabbed my jacket, the cool air of the city brushing against my skin as I stepped outside. This was the moment I had been avoiding. The moment when I had to face the past and all the questions I had buried. I wasn't sure what I would find when I saw Amanda again, but maybe, just maybe, it was time to finally find out. I wasn't sure what I expected when I walked into the cafe near the pier. Maybe it was the familiarity of the place, or the memories of lazy afternoons spent here when Amanda and I first arrived in Hong Kong, full of excitement about the future. But stepping through the door felt like stepping back into a time I had long since tried to forget. The cafe, with its small wooden tables and the scent of fresh pastries, felt unchanged. The same soft jazz music played in the background, and the same old faces lingered by the windows, sipping coffee and chatting. But everything about the moment felt different. I had changed. I wasn't the man who sat here so many months ago, with his wife beside him, thinking everything was fine. I spotted them right away. Amanda was sitting across from Kate, both of them looking down at their drinks, deep in conversation. Amanda's blonde hair was shorter now, the color a little lighter than I remembered, and her clothes more polished, more professional. She looked like the woman I had left behind, and yet she didn't. There was something in her eyes, something I couldn't quite place, that felt different. We hadn't spoken since that phone call months ago, and even then it had been a brief, emotionless conversation. As I walked toward them, Amanda's eyes met mine, and her expression shifted. It wasn't surprise. It wasn't relief. It was something quieter, something like guilt. She stood up slowly, and I could see how hard it was for her to look at me. Samuel, she said, her voice tentative. I didn't respond right away. I just nodded, trying to swallow the emotions that were bubbling up inside me. It had been so long since I had seen her face in person, and yet here we were, like the distance between us had never existed. Kate, who had been silently observing the exchange, stood up as well, giving me a small smile. Thanks for coming, she said, her voice friendly but cautious, as if she was treading lightly around something fragile. I didn't sit immediately. Instead, I stood there for a moment, taking in the scene before me. I hadn't really known what I'd expected to feel coming here, but I certainly hadn't expected this strange mix of anger, sadness, and exhaustion. I had spent so many months building a life where Amanda was a ghost, a memory I'd worked hard to bury, and now she was here, standing in front of me, and the past was rushing back in full force. I didn't know where to start, Amanda said, breaking the silence. Her voice was softer than I remembered, more measured, like she was trying to find the right words. I don't even know if I deserve to explain myself, but I need you to know how sorry I am, Samuel. I've thought about this day for so long, about what I would say to you if I ever saw you again. And I know nothing I say will make things right, but I owe you the truth. I didn't want to hear her apology. I didn't want to hear how sorry she was, but I wasn't the same person who had walked away from our marriage months ago, so I forced myself to sit, to listen. I didn't want to hurt you, she continued, her eyes searching mine, like she was hoping for some sign that I was still the man she once knew. But I was so lost. I was selfish. I wanted more, and I thought that with David I could have everything. But I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. And now I can't help but feel like I've lost it all. I clenched my fists under the table, the anger rising again. I wanted to tell her that I didn't care, that I had moved on, that she had made her bed, and now she could lie in it. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just stared at her, trying to hold back the flood of emotions that threatened to overtake me. I wasn't enough for you, Amanda, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. You walked away from everything we had, everything I believed in, for a life that wasn't real. You thought you needed something more, but you didn't even see what you had, what we had. And now? Now I'm supposed to feel sorry for you? She winced at my words, but I didn't take them back. They were the truth, and the truth had to be said. I never wanted to hurt you, she said again, more softly this time. But I did, and I don't know how to fix it. I don't even know if it can be fixed. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry for everything. I could see the tears starting to well up in her eyes, but I didn't let myself soften. I couldn't. Not yet. Do you even understand what you did to me? I asked, my voice thick. Do you understand how much it hurt when you left? When you moved on so quickly? You chose David over me, over everything we had built? And now you're here, asking for forgiveness? It doesn't work like that, Amanda. I paused, taking a deep breath. You can't just come back into my life and expect everything to be okay. I can't just forget how easily you let go of us. You can't just apologize and expect that to fix it. There was a long silence between us. I wasn't sure what I had expected from her, but it wasn't this. It wasn't the woman who had once been so sure of herself, now broken and unsure, sitting in front of me with tears in her eyes. I know I can't fix what I've done, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I needed to try. I needed to see you one last time, to say everything I should have said when I had the chance. I didn't respond. I couldn't. There was nothing left to say. I had heard enough. She had heard enough. This wasn't about closure anymore. This was about something much deeper, about the ways we had changed, about the ways we had both moved on. I'm sorry, she said again, as if those words could somehow make up for everything. But I didn't think they could. I stood up, the finality of the moment settling over me like a weight I couldn't shake. I think we're done here, I said, my voice steady now, no longer wavering. You made your choices, Amanda, and now I'm making mine. I turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving her behind, leaving the past behind, for good. I walked out of the cafe without looking back, the weight of the moment settling on my shoulders like a heavy coat I couldn't take off. My hands were clenched at my sides, and my chest felt tight with a mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. Relief, anger, regret, they all mingled together in a twisted knot that seemed impossible to untangle. I had thought that facing Amanda again would give me the answers I was looking for, some sense of closure or understanding. But instead, it had only reinforced the truth I had already known. We were both broken in ways that couldn't be fixed. I found myself standing at the edge of the pier, looking out at the harbor, the vast expanse of water reflecting the fading sunlight. The city seemed so distant from here, like I could almost disconnect from everything, from all the noise and confusion. I let out a slow breath, feeling the cool breeze on my face, as if it could wash away the heaviness in my chest. I should have felt something more, anger, satisfaction, even sorrow, but I didn't. Instead, I just felt empty. Amanda had apologized, sure, but that wasn't enough anymore. Not for what she had done, not for the way she had walked away without a second thought. It didn't matter that she had come here to say sorry. It didn't change anything. A part of me wanted to hold on to the anger. It would have been easier that way, easier to stay mad at her for everything, for the way she had chosen David over me, for the way she had let go of our life so quickly. But the longer I stood there, the more I realized that holding on to that anger would only keep me tethered to her. I had spent enough time dwelling on the past. It was time to let go. It had to be. I had learned it the hard way. That life, our life, had never been as solid as I had believed. No matter how much I tried to make it work, no matter how many late nights I spent at work, or how many times I told myself that we could make it through the tough times, it wasn't enough. It had never been enough. The cracks had always been there, and I was just too blind to see them. I couldn't fix that. I couldn't go back to who I was with Amanda, who I thought I was when we were together. I checked my phone again. A message from James. You good? I stared at the screen for a moment, considering how to respond. I had gone into this meeting expecting closure, expecting something to finally make sense, but now it just felt like one more page in a chapter that had already ended. Yeah, I typed back. I think so. I paused before adding, it's over, for good this time. It wasn't just about Amanda anymore. It was about me, about moving forward. It had taken me months to get to this point, months of trying to bury the past, trying to build something new. But now I understood that moving forward didn't mean pretending the past didn't exist. It meant accepting that I had no control over it, that I couldn't change what had happened, and that maybe it was time to stop fighting what was already broken. I walked slowly along the pier, my feet making soft echoes against the wooden planks. The sun was setting now, the sky turning shades of orange and pink, and the water shimmered with the fading light. It was beautiful. It felt like a reminder of what I had been looking for all along. Peace. The kind of peace that didn't depend on anyone else, but on accepting where I was, who I was now. I thought about Ela. We hadn't seen each other in a few days, and I hadn't texted her or made any effort to reach out. Part of me had been holding back, afraid to get too close, to let someone else in. But then, standing there, watching the waves ripple in front of me, I realized that I couldn't keep doing that. I couldn't keep isolating myself, pushing people away because of my past. I pulled my phone out again, looking at the contacts. Her name was at the top, and I hesitated for just a moment before I pressed the call button. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Hey, Samuel, everything okay? Yeah, I said, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. I was thinking about you. Wanted to see if you were free. Maybe grab dinner or something. There was a pause on the other end, and I could almost hear the smile in her voice when she spoke. I'd love that. Where should we go? I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me that I hadn't felt in a long time. I know a place by the water. It's quiet, but the food's good. Sounds perfect. I'll meet you there in about an hour? Yeah. See you soon. I ended the call and felt a small sense of relief, like a door had opened just a little bit wider. I wasn't sure where this thing with Ela would go. I didn't know if it would last, or if it would fizzle out like so many things before. But what mattered now was that I was giving myself the chance to move forward, to try something new, to let go of the past that had held me back for so long. I turned and walked back toward the street, the noise of the city now blending with the rhythm of my own thoughts. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally ready to be present in my own life. Whatever happened, I was going to face it with open eyes and a willing heart. I didn't have to have all the answers. I didn't have to have it all figured out. But for once, I was okay with that. The night with Ela was everything I hadn't expected it to be. Easy, comfortable, and unexpectedly real. The restaurant we met at, a small place tucked away near the harbor, had a quiet charm to it. The kind of place where the world felt just a little slower, the conversation just a little more meaningful. We sat across from each other, the soft light casting shadows on her face, her smile lighting up the space between us. We talked, of course, about architecture, about the projects we were working on, and about Hong Kong itself. But as the evening went on, the conversation shifted. It shifted to things that felt a lot more important than buildings or blueprints. We spoke about our pasts, what had brought us here, what had made us who we were. Ela's story was one of ambition, of dreaming big and moving across continents to make those dreams come true. She had a quiet strength to her that I admired. She wasn't brash or loud, but her confidence came from within, a kind of self-assuredness I hadn't seen in a long time. She wasn't seeking approval or validation from anyone. She was focused, driven, but never at the expense of losing herself in the process. And then, as the conversation slowed, she asked me about my own story, about why I came to Hong Kong. The question felt simple, but when I tried to answer, I found it more difficult than I had imagined. I had come here to escape, yes, but escape from what exactly? I had run away from the failure of my marriage, from the life that Amanda and I had built and shattered. But what was I really running from? And what had I been running toward? I needed a fresh start, I told her, my voice quieter now. a place where I could build something new, something that didn't have the weight of everything behind it. It's funny, I thought I'd come here to forget the past, to leave it behind. But the truth is, you can't run from it. It follows you wherever you go. Ela looked at me with those deep brown eyes, as though she could see right through the layers I had built around myself. "You're not running anymore," she said softly. "You're standing still. And sometimes, that's all it takes to move forward." I hadn't realized it at the time, but those words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just about moving away from my past. It wasn't just about trying to outrun the pain, the hurt, the confusion. It was about accepting it. Accepting that I had been through something difficult, something painful, but that I didn't have to carry that weight with me forever. I could stand still, in the present, and start over, not because I was escaping something, but because I was ready for something new. The night went on, the conversation flowing easily, like it always had between us. Ela wasn't just a stranger anymore. She was someone I could see myself getting to know better, someone I could see myself building something with. I didn't know what that something was, whether it was friendship or something more, but in that moment, I realized it didn't matter. What mattered was that I was present. I wasn't thinking about the past or the future. I was here, in the now, and that was enough. When dinner ended, we stood outside the restaurant, the cool night air brushing against our skin. The city was alive around us, the lights of the skyscrapers reflecting on the water, the sound of footsteps and voices echoing in the distance. It felt like the world was moving in rhythm with me, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Ela turned to me, a small smile on her face. "Thank you for tonight. I really needed this," she said, her voice genuine. "No, thank you," I replied. "For reminding me that there's more to life than running." She chuckled softly. "We all run from something, don't we?" "Yeah," I said, "but it's nice to stop running for a while." She nodded, her smile softening. "Maybe we don't always need to have everything figured out. Maybe the point is to just keep moving forward, one step at a time." I looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, I saw someone who wasn't just a part of my past, but a part of a future I was beginning to see more clearly. She wasn't the answer to everything, but she was a reminder that life could still surprise me, that there was still a possibility of finding something meaningful outside of the things I thought I had lost. "I think you're right," I said quietly. We stood there for a moment, just letting the night wrap around us. Then Ela's phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking the silence. She glanced at the screen, then looked back at me. "I should probably get going," she said, her voice still warm. "But I'd like to see you again, Samuel." "Yeah," I said, smiling. "I'd like that." We exchanged a brief hug, and as she walked away, I stood there for a while longer, letting the quiet of the night settle over me. The city seemed to slow down just a little, the light from the harbor casting a soft glow across everything. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight on my chest lift just a little bit more. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about Amanda or the past. I wasn't worried about what I had lost. I was thinking about the future, about the possibilities that lay ahead. I had come to Hong Kong to escape, but in that moment I realized something. I wasn't escaping anymore. I was living. And that in itself was enough. In life, it's important to realize that you can't outrun the past. No matter how far you go, the memories, the mistakes, and the lessons will always follow you. But that doesn't mean you're stuck. The key is to stop running and start standing still, accepting the things you cannot change and focusing on the present. Moving forward doesn't require perfection or knowing exactly where you're headed. It's about taking one step at a time, embracing new possibilities, and learning to live in the moment. Sometimes, the greatest growth comes not from escape, but from simply allowing yourself to move on.